we'll do the live thing first. Like, hey everybody, welcome back to the Bigmark podcast. It's me, your host, Bigmark. If it's your first time watching, welcome. If not, welcome back. If y'all ever wanted to reach out to the podcast, let us know a topic, or if you ever wanted to just say what up, hit us up on our Twitter or Instagram at the Bigmark Pod or at the Bigmark Podcast, respectively. If you ever wanted to donate to the podcast, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/BigmarkPod. If you ever wanted to rate the podcast or leave a review, please do. It really does help the podcast grow. And tell your friends, let everyone know about the podcast, and make sure we can grow the community and continue to make connections between maybe seemingly disconnected things. I had the grand opportunity the other day, and I want to talk about it on today's episode. On Monday, August 28th, 2023, I had the opportunity to go see Cat Power, Modest Mouse, and Pixies play at Art Park in Lewiston, New York. And it was amazing. I went with a couple of friends, friend from work, Nick, and my bandmate Trevor. And it was great. It was it was a really cool show, and it completely sparked me to do this episode about Pixies, because I really liked them. I always thought about the Pixies, that thinking that they're such an iconic band, really, really popular, influential fusion type band, and being able to see them, like I kind of didn't even realize that they were still like around and touring and still doing that. So especially Modest Mouse doesn't come around that often either. So we hopped on the opportunity and just took a trip down the States. Always fun going stateside. I mean, you know, living in Southern Ontario, you're relatively close to the States. I mean, here in Hamilton, we're about an hour. I think it was just over an hour to get to actual Lewiston. An hour and a half, I think, about. But there's so many border towns in Ontario, and in fact all across Canada. But there's many border, Buffalo and Niagara Falls, Canada, and again, Lewiston's right across the water. Rochester's right across the water. Of course, Detroit right across from Windsor. So again, you have these cities where you're interacting with the states in such an interesting way, and I think it's such a great opportunity. I'm really grateful to be able to go down and see shows that are just like right across the border, or even go play shows. I was lucky enough in one of my bands, we were able to go down to Pittsburgh to play a show, which is obviously a little farther, but at least is in driving distance. Shout out to all my listeners in Europe who probably think that's hilarious, because you get to go to country in a day. But anyway, like I said, going to see the Pixies at Art Park was such a great opportunity. I was so excited and so happy to see it in a new venue too. Like, not like I've been to every venue. Well, yeah, I guess even Massey Hall, I was happy to be there to see Camp the other day, but I'd been there before, so it was kind of like, an old shoe, which is lovely. But it's always nice to go to like a completely new venue too, and kind of take that in. But anyways, being able to see the Pixies and see Black Francis and the rest of the band, the drummer, oh my God, David Lovery, like, oh my God, such a great drummer. Anyway, a little bit about the Pixies, just Pixies, I guess. Anyway. They're formed in 1986 in Boston, Massachusetts. Black Francis, Joe Santiago, or Frank Black, however you want to say it, Joe Santiago, the guitar player, David Lovery, the drummer, and originally Kim Deal as the bass player, but then was replaced by Paz Linchanton. I don't know. I'm sorry. It's always tough. I feel bad when I can't pronounce people's last names because no one can pronounce my last name, so I get it. The Pixies are really interesting in the sense their music anyway is really interesting because it's kind of this interesting blend of like surf rock and punk rock. Like I remember listening to their songs last night and being like, wow, this is like has like such a poppy element. It's very like lilty da da da. But you could tell like when that was out and when that was in the zeitgeist early 90s, it was very like tongue in cheek almost. And, that's I think where the allure kind of lies with this band. Spin, the magazine, described them as surf music meets Stooges' spikiness and oft-times stop-start, quiet, loud dynamics. So again, that really stop-start, quiet, loud idea, I think, is a really interesting point because they really do kind of like, there's dynamics in an interview in some of my research. I read that Frank, or Black Francis, whomever, wherever we're meant to be together. Anyway, so Frank, we'll call him Frank. Black Francis, Frank Black, whatever you want to say. Frank was saying in an interview that they only really know how to play like quiet and loud. They don't really know in between. Their dynamics are there, but they're kind of Dumbo dynamics is kind of what he said. And in that sense where, yeah, they kind of, and they lull you into this really interesting sense. And, with the female vocal in there, with Frank's like really raspy kind of voice, it has this beautiful kind of interplay, that a lot of bands have kind of played off that, right? Like look at July Talk right now, where they have a really like gravelly singer with like a very lilty, like angelic voice along with it. And again, like, you know what I mean? Like the iconicness of this band supersedes a lot of things. Like I remember standing in there in the crowd looking at like the gig cases, where they keep all their equipment. It's just those like big black cases with the chrome corners. And I saw the spray painted Pixies logo on that. And it's just like, it's those little things you see and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is such a cool experience being like, it's like, I don't know. Even if you don't really know the Pixies music, you kind of just know like of them. If you've seen Fight Club, their song, it's just like, there's it was like seeing like living legends, right? Like, there's so many crazy bands from those times, but just my personal relationship with the band is like, I felt like I knew so much more about them, but then, I feel like I didn't know as much as I thought I did, but then seeing them was like, oh yeah, I recognize all these songs. So they play an interesting part in my life. And again, even in me listening to them, I've had it was like their Wave of Mutilation, like best of album or whatever. So I was like, I've listened to that, but I also listen to Frank Black stuff too, right? Like Black Francis' solo project, Frank Black. And, that was always kind of where I was at, was his like kind of solo acoustic stuff, which was really interesting. And I did also see him in Sound City, which is one of my favorite documentaries, which I've done a podcast on in the past, if anyone wants to go check that out. And again, it was kind of like seeing him in this documentary and the way he spoke. Like the thing was his kind of part, if you will, in the documentary was kind of talking about, in the recording process, different bands kind of approach things differently, right? And in his experience, the recording process is you keep you're trying to write a song, or you have a song written and you're trying to kind of polish it or put like the final touches on things, and you keep repeating it, you keep just banging it, hitting the same part over and over and over, whether it's a whole song or just chunking it out until someone does something slightly different. And then all of a sudden that changes things completely, and that becomes the new beautiful thing that's a part of this whole vein that you're trying to chase. And I think that's a really interesting thought. You know, me and my buddy Nick were talking about that on the way to the show. It was like this thought that when you keep playing a song, when you keep repeating a part or playing a song over and over, you almost get inside the song and work your way out of it. It's not necessarily chiseling away from the outside and working it. It's getting inside this already organic thing and allowing it to come out in a different way that you're not overthinking it. You've become part of the song because you've done it so many times over and over and over and over. It's just so ingrained in you that you're not thinking about it anymore. It's all muscle memory. You're not thinking about how to physically do it anymore. And you can be like, okay, what happens if we do this? Boom. And it becomes, there's a reason why we say we're playing music. And I think that is one of the reasons. It should be play. It should be this kind of joyous experiment where you should try different little things. And I think that's what Frank was touching on there. And it's funny in the Sound City documentary, at one point, Dave Grohl, the documentarian and the main interviewer, was asking all the people that he interviewed during the documentary, which was a plethora of all these amazing musicians and artists. And he asked them all, what was your first band, and like what was it called, and what kind of music you played. And you know, everyone talked about all their crazy first bands, and a lot of them were high school bands and doing their little thing, and weirdo. Some people were playing music that you'd never expect, or folk bands or whatever. And you know, Dave Grohl asked Frank Black, and Frank goes, the Pixies. He's like, that's the first band. So Frank's first band is Pixies. So he did he started off with something good and kept it going. In fact, actually kept it going for a little bit. They formed in 86, but they did actually break up in 93. So they weren't together for so long right away. But it took a 10-year hiatus, and then came back in 2003. So you got to respect that. You got to respect that ability to kind of take the time off and say, okay, maybe, you know, Frank was able to do his solo thing, and maybe the other band members were able to do something, and then coming back together was so good. And, you know, again, they've been touring ever since, and that was kind of news to me. I didn't think that they'd be coming around very often. And it was again, exciting because, again, Art Park is in New York, so obviously it's still in the States. And, you know, going over there, like I mentioned before, is always such an interesting thing because it's not very far away. And it's, you know, especially geography-wise, exactly the same. Topographically, I should say, not geography-wise, because it's obviously a different place. But, like, topographically-wise, like, the way the scenery is, it's the exact same. You're not very far away, hour away, but you're in a new country. You got to go through the border. You got to do the custom. You got to show your passport. Like, it's this whole thing. It's, like, so interesting and, you know, somewhat nerve-wracking for no reason. Like, we don't do anything wrong. We're going down. We bought our tickets. You're allowed to go across the border. And it happens all the time. I'm sure when you go down to certain places, they know you're going down. They see it, like when me and my buddy have gone down to Detroit and we go through the border and we say, hey, we're going to go in the Lions game. No one's going to be like, what? There's A, they're going to know there's a Lions game. And B, they're not going to be like, what is that? So, and you're in and out, which is really interesting. But again, you're able to, like, I'm very grateful to be able to see and have the opportunity to go see shows like this. And Art Park was super cool, outdoor venue, kind of in this valley. My buddy Trevor, who came with us, he had seen another band there. I think he saw Robert Plant and Alison Krauss there, but they're in like more of this band shell kind of like building area where you're looking in, the lawn is kind of sloping in, and then there are also seats, more of like a Budweiser stage area if anyone's been there in Toronto. But again, it's this interesting thing, like we had these lawn seats and it was general admission, and we had all these different, actually Nick had different seats. He accidentally bought like better seats, but he had the opportunity to go up to like the third row in this general admission area right in front of the stage, which must have been fucking so cool. But me and Trevor were up in the general admission area, and we're like kind of sitting off to the side, and we're like, there's no way, this is like shitty angle, like we can't be over here. So we found the vein. And like I said, it's interesting in these venues that have like these grassy areas, right? Because you're kind of just standing on grass, and it's this like weird like angle, and your legs are always kind of fucked up at the end. But the way Art Park was set up is they kind of had angles, and then they had a little bit of a tier. So they'd have an angle, and then it'd go down about 1.5 feet, 2 feet, down a little bit more, 1.5 feet, 2 feet. So you had a little bit more of this kind of Coliseum feel. And me and my buddy Trevi go to this one spot, and I stop to kind of survey like where I'm going to look around. And all of a sudden, all these people just started freaking out. And it's like, you know what, man? Like, it's tough. Like, where do you want me to go exactly? Like, are you implying that I have to get all the way to like the back of the whole fucking venue? Because I'm going to be in front of someone no matter what. Like, where I'm ever going to stand. Like, yes, this probably pisses you off that I'm in front of you, but what do you want me to do? But anyway, we had the opportunity to see where, like I said, those little steps that go down. There was one that was open and was right by this little fence area. Me and my buddy Trevi fucking went right in there, sat beside us. There was this lady that was standing behind us, and she was standing on like the ledge, like basically right behind us. But she could see perfectly fine because this ledge gave her like 2 feet height, even though I was still like taller than her on the ledge. But she was super fun, loving it. Funny enough, she actually fucking like brought out a pipe, and we were smoking weed. Like I don't know what the hell the laws were like in New York State, for like weed. I think it's legalized now, but anyway, people were blazing it up like immediately as soon as we got there. People were blazing, because like this whole Art Park area is kind of like in this like kind of scenic, almost like conservation area. Anyway, super cool. But you know, it's kind of funny. That lady was so nice, and she smoked us up and stuff, and like, you know, we were partying, but like, it was a person, like, again, it was a person from another country, and it reminds me over and over again, like, yeah, travel, you know, gives you a different mindset, but like, yeah, we went an hour away and crossed the border into a new country, yes, but like, this is the thing, like, we are truly all the same. Like, yes, we live in different countries that have different laws, and we have different cultures and things like that, but like, people enjoy music. You're there to have fun. You're there. And it was like this, almost this little community. There's a couple of other girls that were standing beside us that were like nice, and we were talking to, and we just created this little bubble of just like, hey, everyone's having fun. We were the only Canadians there. Obviously a lot of Americans there too. And it was just like, again, just that feeling of togetherness and hey, it doesn't matter like where you're from. And I think we need to remember that over and over, that no matter where you are, even if you're going to go out of your hometown for an hour, like, people are different in different places, but like at the root, we're all the same. And we're all these same people that, again, love music, love feeling together, love feeling accepted, love feeling at ease, like being free of concern. We all want to have that together. We all want to be together. And I think we need to continue to follow that always. And that's the message of the Bigmark podcast. And like I said, we always want to spread that love. So if you like the podcast, tell your friends. Hit us up on the Twitter. Hit us up on the Instagram if you ever want to reach out. Patreon.com/BigmarkPod. Give us a rating. Check us out. Listen to the Pixies. I love all y'all. Thank y'all so much for listening. You could have been anywhere in the world, and you chose to be here with us today, tonight, tomorrow, whenever, wherever. I love y'all. Where's my mind?